going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. Welcome to Action Movie Anatomy here on Action Industries. My name is Ben Bateman, and that is Andrew Ghai.
Hello.
Drew, you're sweating.
I'm sweating profusely. I'm very glad that the slow fade didn't leave. It wasn't left behind when we went from the Action Guys back to Action Movie Anatomy. It's really good that you've brought it back into we're back to the future.
You were concerned about it.
I almost thought about. I almost was like, maybe I'll say something about the slow fade. Maybe we don't. And I was like, I'm gonna just let him have it and see what he does.
I did it exactly.
You did exactly what I thought you would.
As expected, guys. It's Monday. It's 5 o'clock. Obviously, normally, you guys are catching us on a brand new episode of the Action Guys here. Today, we're doing a very special episode. I guess it's technically still the Action Guys today, but it's a throwback, if you will, to something very important in our lives. The very first movie talk show experience you and I ever had.
Yeah, well, second.
Gotham's Finest.
Gotham's Finest was our first foray into the after show world. And then, yeah, we went and did Action Movie Anatomy, which is so funny because, we're going to put it in the description later on, unless you already did. I'm assuming you didn't, but maybe you did. Did you already link the old episode?
I did not.
Okay, I thought you didn't, but I know we're going to. So you guys can click down below in the description. You can check out the old episode of Action Movie Anatomy. You and I are, I'm not going to say bad. Yeah. I'm going to say we are green.
We were nervous.
We're incredible. My favorite part is like the very beginning, you intro the whole show, you do the thank you to Popcorn Talk, you do the rules, and then you throw to me. and I'm like, Matt's our guest. I'll let him go first.
You're like, I don't know what to do with my hands. I'm like, Drew, we can't see your hands.
They just keep coming up into the frame. But yeah, so it's so funny because that was 7 years ago now. And you and I, we're like, what are we doing? What do we want to do? We love the Action Army. You guys have come. It's so funny because back in the day, it was just people that watched Action Movie Anatomy. But then through Schmodown and the evolution of 7 years, it's become the Action Army. You guys know we've been trying to think of something else to do, another piece of content, whatever it is. And I think finally we're like, why are we running away from home? We're too good for your home?
Exactly.
We weren't too good for our home, but we're back for Action Movie Anatomy. And we're going to cover a lot of the old catalog. We're going to cover new movies. We already decided what the next movie is going to be for the next episode, but we'll get to that later on. Wow, we both did that.
That was really good.
That was really good. We didn't plan that.
No.
Had we planned that, it wouldn't have worked.
It wouldn't have worked. Like when we used to do Welcome the Action Guys. I always thought that was a funny gimmick.
I did too, and then it was like the action guy, and then but no one ever commented on how hilarious it was.
No, they didn't. They would say other things in the comments.
They would. We did the greatest movie ever made, right? And then the best and the worst, and then now we're back at AMA.
They were all very fun. I think the realization we came to, because obviously the greatest movie ever made was a show that we did on this channel 2 years ago. We did it for about 7 or 8 episodes. It had a lot
wildly
of the same,
successful.
You guys can watch the old episodes. It had a lot of the same sort of DNA as this show, but I think the premise behind it just left us wanting because the movies we were talking about never were the greatest movie ever made, and so
we were just lying every episode to everyone listening at home.
It was a fun idea, and then obviously the best and worst was a really fun show that we both really loved doing. But it's just from a preparation standpoint, it's very difficult to do a show where at the very least you have to watch 3 to 5 movies, but usually it was 8 to 12. And it just took a lot.
Was PLD, was he just Sox Talon back in the day? Or was he PLD? I don't know. He definitely wasn't PLD. It might have just been Paul Denuzio.
Yeah.
In our minds.
He was nervous is what he was back in the day.
He was. His call-ins are legendary. We're going to get through the whole catalog. Okay, the link to the original episode is now in the description. Amazing, PLD. PLD, the other thing, if you could do it, could you resend that link to that website or whatever it was in our
Action Depot?
Yeah, Action Depot. Can you send that in our messenger group? I want to pull it up and talk about some of the points that are in there at some point during the episode today.
Yeah.
But anyway, so just to let you guys know, this is going to be an episode of Action Movie Anatomy on Air Force One, the first AMA revisited, AMA 2.0 episode ever. Mirroring the first episode ever of Action Movie Anatomy. But first, we've got a handful of people that we need to shout out from the Action Guys, because this is normally when we do the Action Guys. These are our founding sponsors. When we started the show, we are just around the corner from our 3-year anniversary of that. Paul Denuzio, John Getz, Jake Yakoveta, Mac Ryan, Alex and Lucas Shashek, AJ Lancaster, big time salute to you guys. And then we got Mike Deacon, Bethany Curl, Liam Gilpin, Luke Marshall Haynes, Andrew Hayes, Danny Joyce, Kelsey Kirkland, Serene Maki. What are you looking at me for? Jeremiah Morris, John Patterson, Eric Ritz, Oscar Romo, and Cody Seal. Big time salute to you guys. Yes, and a happy belated birthday to PLD.
You were doing good. I was just commending you for your great live read.
I was freaking out. And if you guys don't know what we're talking about there, that's patreon.com/teamaction, where we're still figuring out exactly where AMA is going to live and all that. But let's get to the fun stuff.
Yeah. Why was this the first episode of Action Movie? What was it about this movie that we landed on to start with?
Well, okay, so I think in order to answer that question, Ben, I'm going to answer your question with a question of my own.
Ooh.
What are the rules of Action Movie Anatomy?
Okay, so the original rules were, there was 4 original rules. Rule number 1, the hero always plays by their own rules.
Legendary quantifiable rule.
Phenomenal. Rule number 2, the hero and the villain are always the smartest people in the room. Now, the hero could be...
This evolved into what you're about to say.
Yeah. The villain could be a virus, a dinosaur, some sort of super
meteor.
Villain. A meteor. Yes, the meteor is smarter than the people.
They are.
Rule number 3, the movie is driven by police. Originally, in this first outline, it was police, military, or political figure, but we added...
We did.
A mercenary was added, and so was, what was it?
Working for the man or being the man?
So you could be an MTA operator in the taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. We're going to redo that episode.
It's very clear why these... The other day, I was at my girlfriend's house, and I had the option to either watch The Mummy Returns or Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3.
I hope you chose
And
wisely.
I absolutely picked The Mummy Returns. I even turned on Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, and I was like, I'm not going to... Why would I do this when I can watch The Mummy Returns?
Pelham is a much better film.
This will be the first and the last episode of AMA Revisited. How long did these rules actually last? So these rules lasted for a very, very long time. And they took us along... We used to go to this all-you-can-eat... AYCE Sushi. All-you-can-eat sushi restaurant. Ben and I would house about 7 pounds of raw salmon. We'd both get kind of sick afterwards. It was delicious. But we went to like numerous lunches there, and we like plotted out what the best action movies of all time were in our minds, and then kind of like what unifying through line they had.
So the last rule, the 4th rule, was that the movie contains a minimum of 1 explosion. Now, I believe in this original document it says the best action movies from 1981 on. That was like some idea we had when we first started. I think it was probably based on our age. We were a little bit less...
It was because we didn't want to talk about a lot of the action movies that came out before the 80s.
Yeah.
We just weren't that familiar with them. They weren't as near and dear to us.
And if we're being honest, as the show went on, it became clear that anytime we would break that rule and we'd go before, the movies just didn't have as much pop. There were some great films, definitely, and some that we did talk about, but they often were missing some sort of visceral quality that I think was really cultivated in the 80s. A lot of these movies in the DNA that is so fun to talk about is stuff that was kind of invented with that 1980s action movie genre, continued into the 90s, and that is sort of the template for like how big blockbusters are now made.
So I think to go back to what started this, which was why did we pick this movie to start Action Movie Anatomy? So there's a few reasons. I think the biggest reasons were its relationship to us, and also out of all the movies that we had on our list, because we had this master list of movies that we wanted to cover.
That's right.
Air Force One was a movie that we really loved, but we knew it wasn't going to be like a banger. Like, let's say AMA took off. I mean, what was it? Like our 5th episode or whatever had like 1 million views, on Mad Max Fury Road. We were like thinking, wow, I feel like that. We were thinking that... if the show were to take off, we wanted to save like the Terminator 2s and like some of the bigger, more popular ones. Whereas Air Force One felt like more of an under-celebrated classic. But also, this was 7 years ago. I feel like now, even 7 years later, like more and more people love Air Force One.
Yeah.
But I grew up this was the first R-rated movie that I watched with my mom.
Yeah.
She was like down to show me. It was like this and Saving Private Ryan were the first two. So wildly different. But that's one of the reasons that I think I put it up for like the first episode for discussion.
Yeah, I think there's a time period in the 90s of certain movies that I remember coming out that were really exciting and were very popular, and I watched a lot of times. Mm-hmm. And this movie fit exactly there. I mean, this movie came out in 1997. We were both 9 years old.
Yeah.
It's just on the edge where it feels like R-rated and exciting. There's also something that's so funny about the premise of this movie that, when I was a kid is so different than right now. The president being the hero was something that was like really cool in the 90s. You know, you had
how things have changed.
You know, you had like, you know, Bill Clinton and like, you know, just kind of generally well-liked people over the next few years. And then things really started to change. And now the idea of making a movie where the president is an action hero,
It's
can't think of
hilarious. I mean, yeah. Because even they started doing like the Olympus franchise. They're like, we got to go the guy next to the president.
Correct.
It can't be the president. That just doesn't make sense. Whereas back then it was just like, as a kid, I thought being a president meant you also had to be like an action star. Like you could fuck people up as the president.
Yeah, you had to kick ass.
And now Joe Biden is the president.
He like posted that picture like when he first got elected of him with like on a motorcycle with like aviators and a leather jacket.
Like that's Photoshop.
Yeah, and it's like, you look like you're gonna break.
Don't take it above 30, Joe. And I also think the other part of it was this movie fit all of our rules perfectly, like, to a T. Oh, and the beginning of this movie fits like half of it.
Dude, there's so many things. I remember when we were coming up with the rules for AMA that were like, what are those things that when we were kids we thought were just the coolest? And a lot of these were things because we had different upbringings, right?
Yeah.
Like I watched a lot of R-rated movies, so it wasn't as clear to me like the things that really stood out. But because this was the first one for you, it's got red dot lasers,
it's got silencers,
C4 explosives,
it's got a screaming Russian.
Yeah, it's got so many things. Like one of the things I know we talked about in the original version of this is old white dude fighting. Like Harrison Ford like grunting and punching guys. Like whereas you get into like the mid 2000s, it's like Jason Bourne is like a very specific set of skills. Liam Neeson's highly trained. Like
you because you have to be like you can't just like punch people anymore. And you couldn't do it back then, but for some reason in movies you could. Yeah, and this movie fit absolutely perfectly with all of our rules. So it felt like this should be the first episode of AMA. And honestly, I think the other thing that's kind of hilarious is like how quickly did this movie meet all the rules? Because it starts with like him giving the speech, right?
Yeah.
And it's clear that even in that speech, we know that he's a police, military, political figure.
Yeah.
We know that he plays by his own rules because he goes off script. And then the next scene is like the capturing of Radek or vice versa, excuse me. And like that has the explosion. And it shows that he's smart. I don't know. I feel like we catch all of the rules immediately in this movie, like within the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, you get it like everything right away, and then obviously the movie gets going, and what we didn't do it on the original show because it's not actually in this. It's funny looking back at this. It's like a historical document, the original outline. Yeah. But something we added
needed revision.
Yeah, one of the things we added relatively early on is this thing called thesis statement, and we would take an idea, and both of us would have to come up with something very strong, rooted like almost in hyperbole. You know, you didn't want to say like, "Oh, this is my favorite Harrison Ford movie." It's this is the best of this. This is the first, the only, the greatest, whatever. So I don't really know today if I was really thinking about this movie how I would even be able to come up with that because it's this movie's immortalized in my head in so many ways because it's been 7 years. I've thought about this movie.
Do you have a thesis statement? Like if you had to, I think I might have one.
Okay, go ahead because I have an idea for one,
and I think it might be. I have to keep. I don't know. I had to keep thinking.
I'm gonna say this is the most poorly aged action movie premise of any movie in the 1990s.
Dude, you and Noam Sand don't know what you're talking about. Did you see that Jared Butler is coming out with a movie called Plane?
He's not the president.
Fair.
That's what I mean. Everything about this movie is awesome. It's totally Die Hard on a plane. It's got all the stuff going for it that we love, but like in the same way that we talk about the premise of Wedding Crashers, if it was made today, is like pretty offensive. It's two guys like lying about their identities to sleep with women and never call them again. You put that on Twitter as a premise and there's no way that movie gets made. It's the same idea. Like if this, I'm going to make a movie where the president is an action hero and like kicks people's ass and he's super likable. Okay. Who's the audience for that film?
Who's the president?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, Jerry B is the president.
Jerry B is my president.
I would watch the remake.
I would watch that movie.
Yeah.
I think mine is that this is Harrison Ford's best action movie. Okay. I don't consider Star Wars action movies.
Okay.
I think action, like Star Wars are more adventure, drama, epics. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they don't feel like an action movie. But I will say, of all of his other action movies, the whole like Jack Ryan, any of the other stuff that he did, this is by far and away his best one.
When we were watching this, rewatching it, because we've talked about this so much.
What is a firewall?
Yeah, firewall. There's the moment when they're gonna try to get him off the plane, and he goes, "Where's my family? Where's my family? We've got to get my family." He says,
that video is so wonderful.
He says, "Where's my family?" And I just started just losing my shit because there's that he's asked that question, and that video is
looking for my daughter. Have you seen my daughter? My suitcase. I can't find my suitcase.
I believe my family's
wife.
suitcase. Yeah, so Ronnie Begin says Raiders. So this is actually a great point. I'm glad you asked this because you'll find if you go back and you can go watch 95% of the old episodes of Action Movie Anatomy still exist. There's a few that got pulled for one reason or another, which is a bummer. But we did Raiders at one point on that show, and it was an interesting moment because I think we both had the same reaction, which is like this movie feels more like a good adventure movie than an action movie.
Well, and also, I will admit that I am not a huge Indiana Jones fan.
Yeah, no.
I've always thought the Temple of Doom is like my favorite Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah.
And I just don't love Indiana Jones that much, which is why I also used to love having kind of hot takes as my thesis statement, because I did think I was actually surprised that no one said anything for a second.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised you didn't, but also you and I both kind of feel similarly about Indiana Jones.
I have more of an appreciation for Indiana Jones and a respect than I do like a true admiration.
Should the Indiana Jones movies have happened, or should Air Force One have happened? Probably Indiana Jones.
If the Air Force One hadn't happened, I'd probably scream just like Gary Oldman in this film, which is incredible, by the way. So look, thesis statement would always happen.
Yeah.
We would talk about that, and it is something that going forward we will have, because this was the first. I think we added thesis statement on like the second or third episode.
Yeah,
it's pretty early. But one thing that was always there, and it was there from the very beginning, was this thing called fist pump moment.
Ben, what is a fist pump moment?
A fist pump moment is this thing that happens when you're watching the film, and literally you have a reaction where you kind of look around. You're like, are you seeing this right now? You have an actual physical like this. You call your buddy. Hey, I'm watching Air Force One. Turn it to 17.
It's my wedding. Where are you?
Just
You're supposed to be
just
here.
Take
You're
a
the
second,
best man.
You got to just see this right now. And then your buddy does it because he loves the movie as much as you.
Watch it.
And it's so hype. That's what a fist pump moment really is. And
it's a physical reaction to how great something is in a movie. Thesis statement began on Mad Max Fury Road.
Because yours was
number 4.
This is the greatest action movie
ever made.
I was stunned. I was flabbergasted when you said it.
I mean, when I watched that movie for the first time, it felt like it was the greatest action movie ever made. We'll talk about it when we get to that episode. I'm sure we'll revisit it 100%. You still remember all your definitions by heart. Yeah, I mean, we did 250 episodes of this show.
5 years.
5 years, and like Ben said, 95% of the catalog is available online. Some of them are gone. The unfortunate biggest casualty is the Live, Die, Repeat Edge of Tomorrow episode, where I clearly have sweat profusely through my shirt in the center, under my breasts, at my stomach, everywhere.
It's one of the greatest things ever captured live on a camera.
It'll circulate the internet one day.
Because what's amazing about it is if you watch the episode, it's happening slowly. Every time it goes back to you, it's
like a little worse.
It's like the Jordan Peele thing when it cuts to him and he's like pouring sweat.
Yeah.
And like every time it goes back to you, you're more sweaty, but
I'm dialed in. I won't acknowledge it. I refuse to acknowledge it.
It's early on in your hosting career, and so I think you were too embarrassed to acknowledge what was going on. So every time the camera would be on you, you'd be locked in, and that would cut to me, and you'd be going with you'd be
the outline that we had. Oh my god!
You'd be fanning yourself and nodding your head and trying to keep it together. It's so funny. Anyway, so we would get to fist pump moment though, and this movie,
Jesus Christ.
This movie's got a lot. I think I know yours.
My fist pump moment has been the exact same for my entire life.
Yeah,
since I was like 9 years old.
It's so good. I think my fist pump moment in this film, I think it's got to be something with Gary Oldman. It's just it honest to God might be the first scream.
When he kills the pilots?
Because
that's a good one.
I love the plane. So they're getting ready to land the plane, right?
Yep.
And the one guy looks over to the other guy and he goes, no matter what, we land this plane. And the guy like nods his head and you're like, yes, pilots, America, taking care of the president. They're so committed. You're like so excited. And then Oldman starts screaming because they're going to land the plane.
The first kill is so quick too.
He walks in, he shoots the pilot, and he's like, land this plane. And the guy's like, no, just shoots him. But like Gary Oldman's scream is so phenomenal because of the fact that in the 90s a Russian villain, it was terrifying as a child.
Yeah.
because like I had never met basically anybody who spoke Russian. Definitely had never met somebody who would like was as crazy and as intense as Gary Oldman. So when he does that first scream where he's like, "Ah!" you're like, did you just
instantly?
As a kid, I'm like, did he just say a word or did he just like scream? I don't know which. It's terrifying either way.
I think the answer is yes.
But that moment when he shoots the pile as the plane's going down and the fucking plane takes back off.
Yeah, because that's how planes work. Definitely. Yeah, it goes through like the trees. Yeah, and it goes back up. That is such a fist pump moment because it's like, wait, the bad guys are losing.
Yes.
We're fist pumping for the good guys to lose. The bad guys are winning, but it's like, but you want the movie to keep going.
Yes.
And that's the exact moment that you know it's going to keep going. My fist pump moment is very similar in the inciting incident, if you will. I just worked on this this series I was shooting for like about a week over the last like couple weeks or few weeks, and one of the guys' names, he's an older guy, he's from New York, he's probably like close to his 50s maybe or something, and his name is his first name is Xander.
Okay,
and his last name also starts with a B. So he was telling me when he first moved out to LA, he'd go to rooms, and whenever he was in a room, they're like, "Oh, your name's Xander Blood." Like, you know, like Xander Berkeley. And when he started talking about Xander Berkeley, I was like, oh. He's like, dude, he's the ultimate shit weasel of all time. And he was like, oh. He's like, shit weasel. It's like, I've never heard that. And I was like, yes, dude. And then it was like, this is a sign of why we're doing this. So the best moment is when it's so classic 90s. He walks in, he grabs the documents, he says hi to people. Oh, big time salute there, Latrina. We'll get to that in just one moment. Salute. And he said hi to people. He's got the documents. He's like, all right, boys, this is the... He's like giving the rundown when they land on the ground. And then he pulls out the silencer that's like 2 feet long. It's been in his jacket. No one's noticed. And he shoots all of them. He shoots one guy twice. No sounds, nothing. You can see that he's evil. Pure evil in his eyes. And then he's just like cold, puts it away, grabs the smoke thing after he types in the code and rolls it down the alley. And then that's when Oldman gets up. And I'm just like as a kid, I was like... Huh.
And Oldman gets up and like... He's so calm and ready to go, and all his the guys are all sleeping.
They're all like, yep,
right?
And he says it, and they wake, and they all just are like, up, gone, go, military. Like,
just take care of it.
So sick. And also, they do a great job of this movie of having the shit weasel, of having the mole, of having the traitor. He's right there with everyone. Like, right when, as soon as they take over the room, he's the first guy to get the gun.
Harrison Ford gives him the gun. And you're like, no, man, don't give it to him. He's so evil and calculating. It's amazing.
For the Russians. That's the only thing that hasn't aged after all this time, apparently.
He like... Oh my God, the Xander Berkeley scene is amazing. For those that don't know what we're talking about when we say a shit weasel, it's a phrase coined by my older brother that I brought to the show, and we thought was so funny, and it's so consistent throughout the films that we covered on the show.
Yeah,
it's a very common trait. You have a guy who is evil, who like betrays everybody. But it's different, by the way.
Sells out.
It's not just a traitor. Like Boromir in Lord of the Rings is not a shit weasel. Nor is Sean Bean in Goldeneye. He's also not a shit weasel in that movie.
No.
Because he's kind of strong and you kind of believe what he's doing. And
he's
you
got a cause.
Yeah. Shit weasels are characters who like...
They just want to survive. They're cockroaches.
Exactly. Sniveling, just like such a bitch.
Betray anyone.
Actually, Xander Berkeley is the greatest shit weasel of all time. In Heat... When Pacino comes home,
right? Yeah, and in Terminator 2, right? The shitty stepdad. Yeah.
And in Heat, you know, he's on a date with Pacino's wife.
Yeah.
He's like, I should go. And he's like, TV, sit down. It's incredible. He's such a good shit weasel.
Oh man, yeah. So those are our fist bump moments. Let us know what yours are in the chat. And if you guys are wondering in the chat here, I think the way that we're going to be doing this show moving forward is patreon.com/teamaction. Like I mentioned before, the $5 level and above, we're going to be streaming our episodes of Action Movie Anatomy behind that paywall so we can interact with people that are in the chat. We have levels all the way up to 50, but the $5 level alone, that'll get you into the private streams. And then we're going to put it up on the channel right as soon as we're done. So basically what'll happen is usually every single Monday, it sounds like, sometimes it'll be different days, we'll tape an episode of AMA, we'll do it behind the paywall, that way we'll be able to interact with the chat. And then as soon as that's done, we'll download it, upload it, and put it on YouTube and make it public for everyone, or however we're going to do it. I guess you could just probably just make it public. We don't need to download it and re-upload it. But anyway, yeah, there's the link there in the chat. And then for also, if you guys want to interact with us here, we have a Streamlabs. And we got one here from John Lestrina.
Call sign #Ladies Night. I have read the novelization of Air Force One, and you really feel for that one Special Forces soldier that gets shot before getting into the helicopter in the opening sequence. He survives.
What? Oh.
in the novelization.
Really, for that once before they get shot, getting into the helicopter, the opening sequence. Oh, he does. Wow, that actually makes me really happy.
In the Raddick scene.
In the Raddick scene, General Raddick. He's a radical for Raddick. It's a great line.
We got Tay Namaho here with the super chat. Big salute to you, Tay. I've been binge watching the Schmodown, and you guys make your debut in season 4. Also, I'm going to watch Air Force One this week. Merry Christmas. Thanks, Tay. I really hope you enjoy it. It's a classic.
It's a Christmas
classic
movie.
90s film.
It's a Christmas movie.
Christmas, is it?
It's snowing in scenes.
Nice.
Yeah. I believe that's the only qualifier these days.
So after this part of the show, we would often go through and kind of do production development, which I think in this particular case we're not going to do.
We wrote a lot.
We did. We really, I mean, like the original 4, 5, 6 episodes of this, we like did a tremendous amount of research.
Yeah.
And we would like recite Wikipedia basically.
Yeah.
Which was all right.
We changed some words in case we were quizzed on it, or you did the plagiarism check, which we probably still wouldn't have passed.
What up, Joe?
What up?
Salute,
Boris?
buddy.
Big time salute to you, brother. But one thing I think we can talk about is really quickly the star profiles. 2 stars, Harrison Ford and Gary Oldman, very clearly the 2 absolute stars of this movie. Harrison Ford just did Sabrina in 95, Clear and Present Danger in 94, and The Fugitive in 93, the Academy Award-winning film, The Fugitive. Gary Oldman did The Fifth Element and Leon the Professional in 1994, which is crazy if you think about this little run that he just went on. And then True Romance in 93. So, like, Gary Oldman goes from being a crazy Jamaican Rasta villain to a crazy drug addict evil villain that is a crooked cop, and then he goes to being a crazy alien villain.
Yes.
And then he goes to being a crazy Russian villain.
He played a lot of crazy characters, and I believe, unless I'm mistaken, I think we didn't put the year here on Fifth Element. I want to say I think it's 95, but I also know that right before this...
Maybe it was because it's the same year as this movie. I think that's what it was.
Could be, yeah. I also know that right before this, though... Sorry, guys, that was a phone call coming in. He also had done State of Grace, which I think also might have been 93, and he's also crazy. And he's amazing in State of Grace.
I think that's the other one, is like Gary Oldman is maybe the greatest villain character actor of our...
Fifth Element was 97, so I'm off on that. So yeah,
it's okay. Schmodown's over, man. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. And I think State of Grace was 90. I was just gonna, guys.
You've
I'm fucking retired.
Yourself. You've retired. The show's over. Big time salute here, Paul. This is one of my favorite movies ever. Merry Christmas to you.
Thanks, Paul.
Merry Christmas and happy holidays to everyone that is watching, listening. And the other thing is that we're gonna put this up on our same best and the worst feed, most likely every single week for audio for you guys that were following the best and the worst feed on Spotify or iTunes or Apple Music. You can continue to do that through the same link that I believe is in the description, and if it's not, we'll put it in there. It's probably not. We might go back a little bit.
In my back cave here in the chat, I've watched a lot of movies thanks to your show, especially love Crimson Tide. Glad the show's back. Oh, God, I got to tell you, Crimson Tide, and just all of those Denzel Tony Scott movies.
Incredible.
One thing that's really amazing to me is that 7 years ago, when we started doing this show, there was all these little things that we kind of adopted that were favorites of ours or themes we would notice going through the films. Like, I remember when we first started, it wasn't clear to us yet how important the Denzel Tony Scott connection was.
Right.
Like, I don't think either of us really just knew how much we loved it. And then as we got to the end of the show, it was like, those are like the best. Like, they're like the best action movies of their type. And it's funny, there's a show called The Rewatchables that I'm a big fan of, Bill Simmons does, that came out probably 17 or 18 is when it started. They love the Tony Scott Denzel movies. They idolize and worship them the same way. So many of the things that we've talked about on this show over the years, they're reflected in the opinions there. And
it's crazy that we did this show before that show started.
I know.
It's the same show. They stole from us. Bill Simmons stole from us.
Going back to star profiles for a minute. I just did want to talk about it. It's interesting to think about Ford at this point in his career because he comes out in the late 70s, right? You got Graffiti, and then he's got the Star Wars movies. By the time he gets to the mid 80s, he becomes Indiana Jones, Blade Runner, Witness. He's a very respected actor. He's doing all these types of movies. He starts to age into that I'm in my 40s, going on 50 kind of territory. Jack Ryan, and he gets to this movie, and this is for me, this is the end of the golden era.
Because that's the interesting thing about this movie is not like a joke to take on at the time. This is like a big deal. This is like the exact era, the exact villain that you want, the correct scenario, the setting, the role, everything that's kind of perfect for an action movie of that time. It doesn't get better than this.
No, I remember the stuff that started to come out in the years that followed. He's in Random Hearts around this time. He does What Lies Beneath in 2000. a lot of the movies that he was doing, Hollywood Homicides just a few years after that.
Good old Hartnett.
Yeah, and it just feels like the stuff that we loved about him, where he just was kind of a slam dunk, like it was almost just always going to be a hit, kind of ends with this. This is right at like you look at the stuff that he was in right before this. Clear and Present Danger, The Fugitive, Sabrina, obviously Patriot Games is right before this. It just feels like he's an absolute stunner, and I'm just it's just interesting talking about that. Whereas Oldman, it feels like I guess he grows into the next part of his career, but he wins his Oscar years later. I don't know. I guess I'm trying to think about Gary Oldman like in the 2000s, like when we were in high school.
Yeah.
What did we think about Gary Oldman?
I mean, I didn't really know anything about Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like what I thought about Gary Oldman was that he was the bad guy in this movie.
In this movie, yeah.
Because, like, now looking back, things are wildly different. That was another thing we wanted to do, like, on the show, is it's like, 7 years later after covering the episode, what do we think about it now? How's it aged? What do you think about the actors and all that? But also, like, 30 years after this movie's come out, almost, like, how do you feel about it? And it's funny because at the time, Gary Oldman was just like a dude to me. He was just like an actor that was like, I couldn't have even told you if he wasn't Russian.
Yeah.
Like I knew nothing about him at this age. It was the first R-rated movie I ever watched.
He's an incredible actor, but I actually do think similar to
With my mom. Ford,
I kind of think this is the peak for him too, because I think about everything that Gary Oldman is remembered for, like the stuff that really is distinctive. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of these movies we just listed. It's The Professional. It's this movie.
I mean, it's crazy because that's like some of the biggest parts of his entire career just right there.
Yeah, all the stuff later in his career, like Tinker Tailor, or when he wins the Oscar for Darkest Hour, that's all like Oscar stuff.
Yeah.
It's very different. I guess the most famous thing he ever did, just by the sheer force of like the internet,
Dark Knight, like the Batman franchise.
I was gonna say the Batman franchise, and more is Sirius Black and Harry Potter. That's his Sirius Black's his most famous role because those movies are so beloved.
Right.
But I would say it's like that and Gordon, but that's very different, right? Like he's a supporting piece in those movies. Bram Stoker's Dracula, but that's in the 90s, man. That's before this. Like I think in a lot of ways he peaks here from a like legitimacy standpoint. The next phase of his career is much more of like I'm going to get a lot of money to be really memorable in this huge franchise, but it's not about me.
Well, it's weird because it's almost like, I don't know. It's hard to like really say anything other than like he did it perfectly.
Yeah.
Because like he's got a lot of trash. Like it's weird when you look at like someone like Ben Kingsley or Gary Oldman's career and you find all these movies where you're like, why did you agree to do this? What was the submarine movie again?
The which one?
Sir,
A Hunt to Kill It.
A Hunt to Kill It. Like, why would Gary Oldman do that? But then also, he won an Oscar for playing, like, a great, iconic, historical character. But then he also was in Batman as one of the coolest, like, protagonists ever. One of the best, like, secondary good guys ever.
Yeah.
Commissioner Gordon. And then you talk about Harry Potter. So it's like, he did trash, but he also won an Oscar and made, like, millions. It's like, I honestly, it's like Gary Oldman's career, his is way better than Ford's on the back end.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Like, astronomically better.
Ford doesn't have a thing after this period.
Would you rather have been Gary Oldman or Harrison Ford? Harrison Ford was cooler than Gary Oldman could ever have dreamed of. Gary Oldman, better latter half of his career, and an Oscar win.
Man, that's a great question.
Right?
I think the answer...
Let us know what you guys think in the chat also.
I think the answer is still probably Ford. And I think it's just because, like, we've talked about this before. Based on character... He's the greatest action star ever. Based on it's like him and Cruise are like basically the two that you would really go to, just based on the fact that he is Han Solo and Harrison Ford, and then he's got Han Solo and Indiana Jones, and he's got all these other movies thrown in. But from a legitimacy standpoint, if you talk to like actors, people in Hollywood, who do they love? Like who's their favorite?
Yeah,
Gary Oldman is one of the single most beloved dramatic actors that's ever lived. He's like
Harrison Ford couldn't have pulled off Tiptoes.
It's a strong point. He's in Tiptoes.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
I think my answer is still Ford.
Yeah.
I've listened to Oldman on a bunch of podcasts. You know that he's been sober for like 30, 40 years?
No.
He got sober a long time ago. I might 30, 40 might be the wrong number. I don't actually know exactly when, but for a very long time, I know I've heard him talk about it. And it's just interesting to think about somebody who is so good at playing these like ostentatious, crazy characters, who probably at some point in his life was a character but like that and changed his life, right? chaotic, decided to not be chaotic, still is able to channel it. Very interesting guy, whereas, Harrison Ford flies airplanes.
Yeah. And sometimes crashes them.
Who do you think's cooler? Like, who do you think right now is cooler in your mind?
It's tough because there's like this. I feel like Gary Oldman is probably cooler and nicer.
Yeah.
And probably more fun to hang out with. But then there's this part of like grumpy, old, angry Harrison Ford that I like kind of is like iconic to me. And I just want to be him when I'm old.
Which is the movie?
Fuck off.
Yeah, it's the one.
It's from Bruno.
Bruno, yeah.
He like comes up, and now my exclusive interview with Harrison Ford. And he like cuts him and he runs up to him outside of a restaurant. He's like, Mr. Ford. He's like, fuck off. And that's the end of it. It's wonderful.
Yeah, have you seen you've seen that clip where David Blaine,
he's like, get the fuck out of my house.
Yeah, he's like, that's amazing.
He's like, I'm not kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, I've told the story before of when I worked at Nordstrom and I sold him a bag. And he said so little. I worked with him for like 10, 15 minutes and I sold him a bag. I was like 20, I think. And I remember he like pointed at my bag because it was like the same size that he wanted. I was like, how big of a bag are you thinking?
I want that one.
No, he was like, he like grunted. We like walked him over and he took out, I can't remember if he had a measuring tape or he just measured with his hands, but he like picked up a bag and he looked at it and he was like, this one. Just like he like said so little. And then I just remember like, I thanked him and like, are you having a good day? And he was like, thank you. He just like said almost nothing for like 10 or 15 minutes. Yeah, he is an incredible.
I feel like Oldman would have like said something hilarious in that time.
Yeah.
Or something like whimsical.
Yeah.
Just because he's British.
Yeah. When you listen to him talk, not as a character in a movie, but like on interviews, he talks a bit like this. He like talks really slow and kind of soft. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the star profiles there. I think one of the things that's interesting about this movie is that if you were going to make it today, like if the choice was to make this movie again and somehow it got greenlit, the question is, what about it would have to change for this movie to get made if they were going to remake it?
Yeah.
And then within that, who would play what?
Well, yeah, exactly. So I think that normally right now we would talk about production development and where principal photography happened in Ohio and how long it took and how much money this movie made when it came out. But no one really cares about that. It was literally so long ago. But what I think we do care about is exactly what you're talking about. This is almost like our recast segment that we used to always do.
Master Recaster.
And I do think that this is like something that we should try to do pretty regularly on the show because I think it's super fun. Who directs it? Who stars in it? What has to change?
Yeah.
And I would love to hear you guys sound off in the chat as well because we'll probably need some help. So the first things that I think need to change is it would need to be more serious.
Yeah.
And I think you could probably drop all of the Radic stuff.
Sure.
Or do more of it.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's so inconsequential in the way it happens and the way he's just, like, executed as he's leaving when they, like, change their minds.
They're, like, cheering. It's like one of my favorite sequences of the movie.
I feel like that might need to be a little bit different. I do love... We haven't talked about Glenn Close at all, and she's wonderful in this movie.
She's amazing.
I think that role is really important, but, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think in order for it to change... probably just have to be a little bit more serious in terms of like the stakes and reality. And I do think, I guess we have to stick with it. We have to stick with the president being a hero.
Well, so here's what I think you have to do. If you're going to try to make the movie now, I don't think you can go with just a straight up heroic president. It's got to be more complicated than that. I think it's way more of, so right here, it's
like at the beginning. What if in the beginning of the movie, like it shows him compromising his integrity in favor of Radic, but doesn't actually get him free yet? Then this is like, sorry.
I was going to literally say, what I was going to say was, I think the idea of a president who does something, because Noam Saying here suggests Denzel Washington is president, which is a great suggestion, and it makes total sense. He's got the likable quality. He's a guy that I think could pull it off. It's hard to not like Denzel, but as Garber in The Taking of Pelham 123, he's a guy that compromises his integrity, and you find out midway through the movie, and you kind of have to make a judgment call of like, this guy's sort of sucks a little bit.
Vin Diesel is president.
Never changed.
Lustrino. It's still hilarious.
But he still has to be heroic, and I think that's kind of the angle I would take is a president who does something you disagree with.
Sean Bean is president. Anybody?
Oh God, it conflicted. Yeah, and I think that as the film goes on, he's sort of having to redeem himself.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like he dies at the end of the movie if it gets made now. I kind of feel like he saves the day.
They both go off the plane. He takes him off the plane at the end. Get off my plane. He tackles him off, no parachute.
And then Glenn Close becomes president.
And then Glenn Close becomes president.
When I interviewed her a few years ago, and I asked her about the
copyrighted.
sequel, she told me she'd do a sequel, but she had to be the president.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
that's perfect.
So I mean, I feel like that's the movie.
I like Pedro Pascal or Idris Elba as the president. I think either of them could be the president. Pedro could be like a little bit younger and did something bad, whereas Idris could be like, because he's a little older. He's like in his 50s now.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like Denzel's just like a little older than I want to pull off the action that I want.
Should Denzel be the bad guy?
Should Denzel be the bad guy?
He's too likable. It's impossible. It would never. He could do it. But think about when Denzel played in like Safe House.
Nick Cage should be the bad guy.
Oh, it'd be incredible.
You got a free ride there.
We literally already did the segment.
We did. I think that was the other thing I was going to say at the beginning is like we had the Cage versus Cruise segment. Yeah. And it was like, I think a big part of it was we wanted to do get off my plane. Yeah. Like we wanted to do that. I think that was the other part.
I know Glenn. He's great.
He's great. I love Glenn. I joke about Trump, but you make him a disliked president. It's a bit of a redemption story that doesn't need to end with him being a hero. Just complex. Yeah, well, we'll probably leave the politics out of this, just like they did back in the original Air Force One. Clearly,
I think it's got to be if you're gonna do it
after we get him as James Bond. He's not gonna do it.
I think if you, oh man, how good would
Xander Berkeley is just him. Yes, dude, 100%.
He still plays him.
Yeah.
How good would oh god damn it! I just had such a. How good would Pierce Brosnan be as president?
Ooh.
Older Pierce.
He's British.
Yeah.
Can't be British.
And he's not as charming.
Literally just
accent.
arguing for Idris Elba. I could see either. Yeah, he's probably not as charming with an American accent.
Yeah.
No, I can't do it.
He could be the bad guy. No, he's too likable.
He's too sweet. He's too beautiful.
You know who would be a great bad guy if you...
Sean Bean.
Yes.
I mean, of course.
He's the best, is every bad guy that's ever been. I don't know. I'm so okay. Then let's think. Glenn Close? Just still Glenn Close. It's probably just still Glenn Close.
It's probably just still Glenn Close. You know who was really great was, and I'm shocked to say this, but after watching Hustle, I'd have Queen Latifah in there. I feel like she'd be, she has the right energy that Glenn Close had. Other women to play that role that I think would be great. I could see like Charlize playing that role.
Yeah. She's almost too powerful, though. I feel like she almost steamrolls in some way, right?
You need him to be like a little bit.
She's got to be, I think, a little more. Like it's hard. She doesn't support as well. She's way more of a star.
RDJ is president.
Tom Cruise is the bad guy.
Sign me up.
Yeah. Jamie Foxx is the president? No. That already happened.
Jared Butler's the bad guy. Wait, what?
But actually, if we're really thinking about this,
Henry Cavill is president. Michael Shannon is the bad guy.
Michael Shannon as bad guy is incredible.
That's incredible.
It's a really good cast.
That's a really good cast.
Yeah. Okay. I like that a lot.
I like that. I also can see Liam Neeson as the bad guy. For real.
Not as the president?
No. Because, I think Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul is still one of my favorite castings in his whole career. And him just being, a little more evil, I love it. I love that casting.
Yeah.
Cavill as president, I don't want it yet. I don't know why. But I do love Michael Shannon as the bad guy.
Yeah. Michael Shannon as the bad guy is really, really excellent. What about if... okay, so the guy who tries to take control and strand Ford that Glenn Close has to overrule. That dude.
No, the other shit weasel. The shit weasel on the ground.
What if that guy was played by Tom Wilkinson?
Tom Wilkinson. I can see that. That's a great casting.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And then Glenn. If it's not Glenn, who is the female role? Who's I like Queen Latifah. I think that's pretty smart. I'm trying to you've got the standard castings that would happen right now, like Viola Davis,
Renee or something.
Yeah.
I didn't watch Judy. Right? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, Judy.
And I heard she was great in that.
She's great. Yeah.
It's not bad. Brian Cox somehow.
Cox.
Always. He could be the shit weasel. Dude, you just watch Logan Roy. He'd be the perfect shit weasel guy on the ground. Yeah. That'll never happen, Glenn.
It also, yeah, he's better. He's like almost better as like a bad dude or whatever.
Who? Cox?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. He has to. He would be the guy on the ground.
Yeah, incredible. Ah, it's so good.
Will you sign it?
Sign it, Pam. You got to put her in there too. Then
I think Viola Davis is also I think the other issue is also that she's. I mean, she usually is too powerful. She comes off like, I feel like, but then maybe because Queen Latifah, I think like she did a good job, and also in Stranger Than Fiction is kind of like being. She like works with Thompson to like trick her and doing what she needs in a positive way. She's
got the right vibe. I feel like that role gets cast too often as Viola Davis. It's almost like standard now.
That's not a bad one. I like Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah, like I feel like Viola Davis is too predictable. Or Angela Bassett. Those roles are like exactly what they're getting cast in now. And I want something more interesting.
Queen Latifah, because like I thought she did a good job in Hustle. Yeah, I haven't heard of her doing anything in a long time. I like Michael Shannon as the bad guy. Who plays the president? And then we just need to keep moving on because we're not, huge. Hugh does have a good American accent.
He does, and he's heroic, and I can see. Yeah, oh wow.
No, I think I think you might have just convinced me.
Yeah,
But do we believe the compromising moral character?
Yes. Did you ever watch The Frontrunner?
No.
Is the Jason Reitman one where he's the president and he like cheats on his wife?
Oh,
starts to come out.
Yeah.
He's great at having like a smile, but there's like something a little darker going on. Mm-hmm. You know. And at one point, when Gary Oldman yells at him, he could be like, "No, not my family."
Yeah, and we know he cares about his family. If you've seen Prisoners,
yes, if you've seen Prisoners, exactly.
John Hamm. I think PLD will probably take care of it.
Okay.
All right, and so director.
Oh,
I actually don't mind the Greengrass. The Russo brothers could maybe do it, but I feel like they're getting a little bit too much.
The Russo brothers. I think it's too glossy if they do it. Greengrass, I think, is a little too gritty. I want it to be
Taylor Sheridan.
Yeah.
After Tulsa King, he could do a nice little line there.
I find that Taylor Sheridan, like, he's hit or miss for me now.
As a director, he's tough.
Yeah, like he does. The ones where he takes himself too seriously with the script, it like you end up without remorse. Movies that are just like it's just too much going on that wants to be so cool. I feel like you want somebody who has like a really good sense of that like kind of. I guess like redemption, like feel good, but while still understanding stakes. Yeah, Gavin would be phenomenal.
Gavin O'Connor.
He would do a great job with this.
He would do a great job with this.
Yes, there'd be a brother thing though. There always is.
Tom Hardy is somehow president.
Yeah, who like the president has a brother. That's what's got to go.
Kaczynski isn't a bad one. I mean, I know obviously he just did Top Gun. We know he's got a lot of heart there. I kind of like Gavin. Gavin's a good one.
So the bad guy obviously.
My favorite, Gavin O'Connor.
The bad guy's obviously just Huge's brother.
Matthew Vaughn.
He's like that's the story, and then the brothers come together.
What?
The bad guy is obviously Huge's brother if Gavin's directing.
Yes.
Brothers always show up.
They always show up.
In his films.
Is Hugh the president? Is that what you landed on?
Isn't that what I thought you agreed with me.
I think I could do that.
First episode, already going to Huge.
Hugh, Michael Shannon, Queen Latifah.
I like it.
Gavin O'Connor.
Brian Cox.
Just
add Cox, man.
Actually, Wamsgams could also play that role.
Ooh. Wamsgams could be
Berkeley.
Berkeley, yes,
dude. That is it. That is my fist pump moment right there.
That's
incredible.
I would love
his agent needs to start making him the shit weasel bad guy in movies. He's so incredible.
He's my favorite character in all of Succession.
We've been rewatching it. It's so funny.
It's funny.
Actually incredible that show is. Okay, all right. I like that. That's Wamsgams as Berkeley might be the best way to go. All right, so the other things that we did when we first started doing this show was our favorite scene in line, which is pretty much the same thing as fist pump, really, but favorite line is not. Do you have a favorite line?
I still go back to, I guess this is like the hero qualifier is something we used to talk about a lot.
Yes.
The hero qualifier, the villain qualifier, and this one has a great one where the dude who plays, I think he's the Secretary of Defense, maybe?
I don't know. He's a general.
He's a general. He's like, he's in the regalia and he's got all the sweet stuff. And they're talking about like the president, he's like, if the president's up there, he may be our best chance. He flew more helicopter missions under my command than anyone in my battalion. He knows how to fight. That's like the line, and that's my favorite, I think, because I love I love lines in 90s action movies where characters do that shit.
Yeah, I mean, we came up with the hero and the villain qualifier because they always have. Because the other guy he's a radical fanatic. It's like that. He has the whole thing about how bad Gary Oldman is.
Right.
This is how good Harrison Ford is. That's a phenomenal line.
Yeah.
This was almost my fist pump moment, but it's also my favorite line. It's right after Oldman executes the national security advisor.
Yes.
He's a very good negotiator. He just bought you 30 more minutes or whatever. It's like, it's so awesome because, again, I go back to this is pure nostalgia for me. As a kid, it was just like, oh, he did it. Yeah. He actually shot him. Like, because they never do it in movies. They always threaten and then they count down and then someone comes and saves them. But he actually kills this dude.
He just executes him
right in front of everyone.
Oh, so good.
That's so amazing.
That moment's amazing. There's also just like so many things in this movie that when they happen, it's just my favorite. Like, you want to make a villain seem evil. Like when he's so close to Harrison Ford's daughter, and he's and she's like
do something creepy.
Yeah. And the daughter's like, my father's a great man. You're nothing like my father. You can see how angry Oldman is. He like kisses her forehead, and the mom's like, oh.
I love also when he's like, do not lecture me on the rules of war. he builds the whole way. It's like, don't. Like his
screams are so good in this movie.
I bet the sound guy hated him.
Yeah,
he hated him. He's like, man, we got he blew it out again, man. Like, what are we supposed to do? We're standing in the other room with the boom. Amazing. All right, so recasting, we already did that. Cage versus Cruz. Any lines you'd like to say?
Yeah, I mean,
do not lecture me.
I mean, Cage would be an incredible
He'd be
villain.
A good villain in this.
Because he dials it up and he goes full tilt.
Yeah.
And when he does, it's often horrible. but it's often really fun to watch.
It's like the Boston accent in Unbearable Weight. Right here.
He would. I think that if he was willing to go crazy, like, what's the movie where we did the one thing, Rage or Tokarev, and there's like
Rage or Tokarev.
There's like a still of him just like screaming. I mean, his stuff in Port New Orleans. There's like
is that Bad Lieutenant?
Yeah, he might actually be my favorite villain casting, but it would probably be more like this version, not the super serious version.
Yeah, I would love for him to do like an Oscar-worthy performance version of a bad guy in this. So there are 3 categories of action movies, Ben. There's totally legitimate. Those are movies that are completely believable. There's not any moment where you're watching it and something in it you're like, I don't know if that could happen. There's totally ridiculous, where the entire time you're battling, robots on the moon that can also read your mind, that can also go through walls. You're like, I don't know if any of this makes sense.
Transformers 4
and 3 and Moonfall.
And 5.
Yeah. Or there's ridiculously legitimate, which is the middle category. That's where the absolutely ludicrous meets the perfectly grounded, and it gives you a great action movie category.
It's usually grounded in reality because there's one quality, like an incredible performance or a really great script or something like that just makes the movie feel like it has a little bit more weight. You're able to hold on to it. It doesn't go off the rails, but it does have some comedy. It has some ludicrous stuff in there that, some campiness, some lightness.
And I think this movie is the perfect middle category.
Yeah,
I really do. I think Oldman is kind of both ends of the coin of like grounding it in reality, because he does give such a good performance, but he's also so over the top. It's pretty crazy. Yeah,
I would agree completely. I think this is ridiculously legitimate. It's right in the middle. I think one thing, and we're not going to do it here because it's the first one, but when we very first started this show, we would do a thing where we would rank heroes and villains. We kept a running tally of, we'd rank them all time. And after about 20 or 30 episodes, I think we stopped doing it.
It was really hard to make the graphic.
Yes, it was difficult to make the graphic. And luckily, we have PLD for that now.
Yes.
No, but I think we're going to start with this.
Kind of.
Right now, I would say that Oldman's Ivan Koreshkov is our number 1 villain. And right now, Harrison Ford is our number 1 hero. So there you go.
Wow. Really making some big claims.
Well, we've done one episode.
We have done one episode. And since we've done one episode, that means we need to talk about the next episode. And the only way to do that is by doing The Pitch!
Nice. That's really good.
It was good. It was great. It was just like the old days. It's like riding a bicycle.
Yeah.
So we thought for the next episode of AMA 2.0, we would actually go to the present. And we'd actually go all the way to Narnia. Actually, it's not Narnia.
We are doing the Chronicles of Narnia. The Lion... No.
What is it? Where are they at again? Where's the place that they live in that movie?
In Narnia?
No, in the movie we're going to cover.
Oh, Pandora.
Pandora,
is what you're getting at.
right? The app that streams music. We're going to be covering Avatar: The Way of the Water.
We're going to be doing Zahalu.
We're going to be doing Zahalu with each other and with trees and with beasts that fly. In 2 weeks, so I believe it's January 2nd is when we'll be back. That'll be a Monday. We're going to take next week off for the holidays. Ben and I will both be traveling, and then we're going to come back and talk about Zahalu for about an hour in your ear holes. I'm really excited about it. This was so much fun to come back and do an episode of AMA, man.
It really is really fun. I mean, it's so easy to laugh. It's lighthearted. It has a point. We love movies, and I think I'm so excited to have an opportunity to watch something during the week, get genuinely excited to talk about it, come up with fun ideas and games, and then come here and share it with you guys. So as Drew mentioned, we are going to be doing this in a very special, very specific way. Mondays, 5 p.m. It's going to be streaming to every single patron at the $5 level, patreon.com/teamaction. And at 6 o'clock, it'll just be available on the channel. And as far as the Action Guys and, talking about stuff that is not this, we've talked about doing episodes of the Action Guys. I don't think it's going to be gone.
Yeah, we might just do both. We might do the Action Guys like maybe bi-monthly. We're not exactly sure what it will be, but if you guys subscribe to the channel, as we saw a few people did earlier before we started the show, that'll be a great way for you guys to keep up on what we're doing. Ben, I don't know what happened, but it looked like our chat wasn't refreshing. It looks like John Getz showed up in the chat.
Salute, Getz.
Yeah, big time salute to you, Getz, as did a good friend of yours and mine.
My guy, Yuval Barash, one of the late ads of the Action Army, got into the show when it was off the air, but went back and watched most of the episodes. I told him we were doing this the other day, and he about lost it. He's real excited.
Really happy you're here, man.
Yeah.
And he's got a great quote there at the very top. The element of surprise.
Yes, he says, the element of surprise is a formidable advantage in combat. If he's up there, he's the best chance that we have.
He's the best chance that we have.
God, it's so good. It's so incredible.
Yeah, amazing. So glad that you guys are here. So glad that you were able to make it, Yuval. So you guys know we'll be back January 2nd covering The Way of the Water, another episode of Action Movie Anatomy. Let us know how you guys feel about the show coming back. Let us know other episodes or movies that you'd like us to cover. And as we talked about before, patreon.com/teamaction. You'll get in behind the paywall to watch it live. And also, we're going to put up polls there in the future for when we're trying to decide between maybe a new movie or maybe between 4 movies in the old catalog. We'll let you guys vote on there as well to decide exactly what we're going to be covering. And also, we used to have a segment called AMA Question. We're going to bring that back probably at the $5 or $10 level as well. You guys can just submit a question and we'll cover it on the show. I miss doing that. I really love doing that. So
big shout out to my guy, Jeff Roberts. Haven't seen you in here in a while, my man, but nice to see you in the chat. Welcome.
Big time salute.
Yeah, thanks everybody for hanging out with us. We had a great time doing this. It looks like there's one
Haskell
more.
420
Haskell
donated $10. Hey guys, happiest of holidays and Merry Christmas to you and your loved ones. Speaking of Ford, Ben, I know you started watching Yellowstone and hope you're loving it. Ford and H. Mirren star in Isu's second spin-off, 1923, and they're awesome, and such acting forces.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you like Yellowstone?
I do like it. I've slowed down on it. I just I got hit a little point where I was less interested. I've been watching other shows, but it is good. I imagine I'll finish it at some point, and definitely I'm interested in checking out 1923. I mean, that's cool to have a TV show that stars Ford and Helen Mirren. That's like pretty big
that's
time.
Like really big time.
Massive actors.
For a TV show. So thanks so much, Ed. Glad to see you here, man. Much love to you. Happy holidays to you and yours. Happy holidays to everyone here in the chat. Thank you guys so much for joining us for the very first episode of AMA 2.0. We're very excited to be back on January 2nd. We love you guys. Enjoy the time with your families, and we'll see you.